Hello everyone, this will be a quick review on Edge against the GRS speaker, which is much cheaper. And I bought them both because I was looking to get a very low frequency, like 24-25 Hertz bottom end, minus 3 dB. So they both can work. However, there are a few significant disadvantages on the Edge one for my purposes. And the cheaper GRS is actually better for the purpose which you're using in the moment. So on a quick glance, the Edge looks absolutely super decent speaker, and I love how it's built. When you look at before I touch it, you can even see the color from there. You can see the spider is very solid, and you can see the wires which make the connection between the terminals, which are not actually terminals, they're simply wires. So I've connected them for a test in series. So basically these two are connected, and because I wanted to leave the opportunity to return the speaker, I just embedded these little wires there for the testing, so I can return it if I don't like it. So, as I say, solid aluminium frame, huge magnet, very powerful one, 75mm voice coil, which is very large, and it can handle a lot of power. You can see it from there. So that's the winding, is quite thick as well. So the membrane it's pressed paper, and it's a good quality one. It's thick enough. You cannot see anything from there from it because it's covered with the label of the name. You can see how the connection is done for the output terminals. It's vented from everywhere, so there's ventilation holes there. You can see even the voice coil has, even though that's not strictly required when it's back vented. It's very heavy. So this is version E3, which is supposed to be the newer version than the E6 one. You can see it has vents everywhere, and here and there, so it's very well vented, and it's designed to handle significant amount of power. However, the specification doesn't quite match what it really is, so I'm going to speak about that in a bit. But just first, I would like to speak about the GRS 12SW-4HE, which is this one. So that's little one. It seems definitely cheaper build than this one. However, it has a solid magnet as well, incomparable with the Edge. The voice coil is 50mm, which is not bad at all. The flexible wires are attached in the more standard way, which for very high volumes and very long prolonged listening probably is gonna it's possible they to fail. In contrast, these are really thick wires, and they're going through the spider, which make them very reliable at high level and prolonged time of use. So this one is also ventilated, so we can see the vent holes there, and if peak we can see the voice coil from there. It has vents at the back and a little bit of basically that little mesh which obstructs some chunky rubbish to get in. It has standard connection terminals, which of course connect my wires to it. I of course tested them both with real signal and in a real box, which is this 110 liter box with 10 centimeters port tuned at 23 Hz. That's measured, so that's the accurate connection and port frequency. So it has a little bit of acoustic treatment inside. It's not too much, it's not too less. These are the terminals which are connecting the speakers. The box is very solid, made of 1 inch or 25 millimeters thick MDF, so it's very solid. So let's talk about the parameters. So the edge one, if it was with the same specification like it's advertised, it would have been a very good speaker. However, for my application, I want the QTS to be about 0.4, 0.5. However, by measuring this one, it ended up by being 0.8. Also, if I try to press the membrane, that is extremely stiff speaker, which means that his equivalent volume is very small, which is good for getting the box smaller. However, it's very difficult to move by its motor and its coil. So in contrast, this one is much more softer, so it has higher equivalent volume. This has about 10 liters, this has 110, which is not the volume which needs to be placed in when you're playing, when you want to reproduce music. However, it's a parameter which is defining how much stiff is the speaker, and it's related to the volume it's needed. So now I'm going to be really cheap and show you just my monitor screen to show you what I've got in theory and what I got in practice, as well as the parameters. So this is the GRS parameters. You can see the QTS is a bit higher than the advertised one, which is 0.45, I think, or something. The resonance frequency is a bit higher, but it's still about there. And the equivalent volume, which is the parameters which define predominantly the box size and port tune frequency. So these are closer to the advertised specification, and this is for the GRS. This is for the speaker. However, the edge is absolute scam in terms of parameters. So the QTS must have been much lower than this, which is in the moment. The resonant frequency must have been lower, which allows you to achieve a lower frequency and with lower attenuation, so basically more efficient and low frequency. And the equivalent volume was, I think, about 27 liters or something, and here is 9. So this means it's 3 times stiffer than it should be by design. And that cost, it's a bit of a downside of its sensitivity. So it's not as sensitive as this one is. So if you show you the theoretical charts, so that's the GRS and that's the edge. So it seems that they're going to have a better frequency response in comparison. However, in reality, that doesn't become quite apparent. And this one has a smooth roll-off of the because this has a bit of sharper one, which is supposed to be good. However, high QTS speakers above 0.4, 0.5, they are not well operating in ported volume and ported box, and these are both tested in ported box. So it has less control of the speaker. So basically, when the bass comes and just it stops instantaneously, the bass continues playing from the speaker. So it has less control than it would have been if the QTS was lower. This one is about 0.5, which is better. Still not good enough for the purpose which I'm looking for. However, we're getting that frequency response in theory. When we turn to the practical representation of this, so this is the frequency curve which I've taken from that particular room, And please ignore those minimums and maximums which are going at the time in the sharp peaks. So these are only because of the room distortion. So that's a rectangular room which always having those mix and max. And if you move the subwoofer and the microphone, they always gonna change. Depends on the position of the subwoofer and the microphone. So I've used measurement microphone to capture those data, and I place the subwoofer and the microphone in very particular places. So these are just to compare the difference. And the dark green is the GRS, and the light green is in the same box with the same port tune frequency is the edge. So you can see that in general generally has about 6 even to 10 decibels of less sensitivity. So these are both 4-ohm speakers, and they are both tested exactly on the same level. I haven't touched anything in the setup besides the changing the speaker in the enclosure. Nothing else has changed. The same power, same everything is the same, but it's just here about 31 hertz normally, and 27 I have resonances of the room, so they're repetitive everywhere. The 50 hertz I also have another resonance, and in that particular place I have that dip here, which this is not caused from the speakers. So if you imagine that's flat, you can see what's the delta of the frequency response of both speakers, and you can see this speaker, it's much more sensitive. Its low end is much better, because if you see this one peak is about 80 decibels, this is the edge, and then these two peaks are significantly different. So you have much more drop here, and with the GRS actually you have boosted the low frequency and you have much higher low end. And when you move it in a place in the room which is I can actually just switch that to show you how is the low end in the place which the room doesn't have suppression of the low frequency. So I just switched to the place of the room which is much more sensitive to the lower frequency, and you can see the lower end is the difference is significant as well. So in short, we have the measured parameters few times measured with I would say relatively accurate test setup. That's the GRS spec. You can compare it with the original spec. It's slightly different. That's the edge spec. Significantly different than the spec. And my outcome is that if you're looking for lower frequency, this speaker is 60, 70 pounds. This speaker is 160 or to 200 pounds, depends where you're buying it. For reaching low end frequency, this is much better speaker. It performs much better. And in the same volume, and you cannot, even if you change the volume, you cannot get too much of this. You have better control, better sound quality, and better sensitivity. So if it's just 6 decibels difference, this means you must feed 4 times more power for this one to play the same. So if I play this with 50 watts, I'm gonna get the same level averagely with this if I played 200 watts. So, what's the benefit of this? That this one, if you see the suspension, if you see the bottom suspension, is very, very robust speaker. I would say it's much more robust than this one. So, this may have a very, very high excursion, probably like 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters. I mean, it's somewhere in the spec how much exactly does it have. But it definitely can cover it. The voice coil is long enough to handle that as well. So if you have a really a lot of power to waste, so if you have like 500 watts amplifier or something even more powerful, and you want to play it very long time on very high level, that's the speaker. So that's designed to last very high loads. Even though there was a little bit of clicking sound when it's play, even though it's not very high power. This one, if you want budget, but very good frequency response and better transient response, that's a better speaker. Indeed better for my purposes. This is also a single coil speaker, and this is a dual coil, so this is more suitable for automotive application in a small box. For example, in like 30-40 liters closed box, that's gonna play quite well and well controlled, even though we're not reach to a lower frequency, probably not lower than like 40-45 hertz, but it's gonna get a very good level. With a ported box, you can play relatively low frequency, like easily can play 30 hertz, with of course some attenuation. But it has more poor control, which it gives a bit more lingering, like more boomy bass, which is actually, it may like to some people, especially for when you put it in a car subwoofer. That may be a not bad option, because it's going to be very boomy, and the lingering bass, and basically when it's going to add more bass to your song than actually the song has. Which is of course fake, because it's going to be just limited by the own resonance of the speaker, the port of the box, and the air inside. So it's going to just have its own resonance, which is going to linger. After you have boom, it's going to after that, which I guess a lot of people are going to like, but it's not true sound. So I spent a lot of time to find proper specification. For that reason I'm making this video, because it was just a very poor spec on the web, and it wasn't clear in any way what parameters to look. So if you find the video useful, please like it, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.